Cologne, first crack in the Rhine hour, lies before onrushing tank elements of the First Army. In a desperate defense of the cathedral city, streetcars are used as roadblocks, but fail to stop the tanks which simply haul them along. So rapid is the tank advance that German strong points are overrun before effective resistance can be offered. 2 years of ceaseless bombings have reduced Cologne, Germany's fourth largest city, to a heap of rubble.
Of all the battles of the Second World War, none was costlier than the Battle of the Bulge. 500,000 Americans fought, 19,000 died. Germany was losing the war and the battle had all but finished them off. It was cold and bloody. It took the will of many to persevere through the harsh winter. Boys became men, and those men came home heroes. Howard Unruh was one of those men. His commanding officers discovered his talent for shooting accuracy, and he was sent to Europe where he excelled. He calmly killed dozens of Germans and noted each kill in his secret diary. Every gruesome detail. The quiet boy from New Jersey found something he was good at and had medals to prove it. After the war, Howard returned home to Camden, New Jersey, an urban suburb of Philadelphia. Camden's progress in the early part of the 20th century was a direct result of the Industrial Revolution. RCA, Campbell's soup, and ships were the city's main exports. On the surface, Camden seemed like the great American success story. But the real truth was, a series of events would alter the city's landscape forever. Howard had also changed. Always the quiet kid, he grew only more introverted after the war. He became obsessed with guns and scripture. He continued his secret diary, replacing confirmed kills with notes about local shopkeepers, convinced they were speaking ill of him. His paranoia made it impossible for him to hold a job. He lived in a tiny apartment with his mother. In 1949, at 28 years old, his world had unraveled, if only in his own mind. Howard's mother had hints, but no one in the Kramer Hill section of Camden knew of Howard's rage. On September 5th, Howard built a gate, giving him access to his apartment without having to go through the neighbor's yard. Afterwards, he went to a 24-hour movie theater in Philadelphia where he saw I Cheated the Law and The Lady Gambles. He returned home at 3 a.m. to discover the gate he had built was stolen. That unfortunate event set him off. He went to sleep enraged, and when he awoke the following morning, his rage was still there. Just after 9 a.m., dressed in his best suit, Howard finished his breakfast, went to his bedroom, and loaded his German Luger. He put a handful of extra bullets in his pocket. At 9:20, he left the apartment and set out on what became known as the Walk of Death. Mayor Berger, a journalist from the New York Times, became more famous for writing the poem Casey at the Bet and for the Pulitzer Prize he won for the account of that day. Here are some excerpts from Berger's story. Unruh first walked into John Plarchik's shoe repair shop near the north end of his own side of the street. The cobbler, a 27-year-old man who lived in Pennsauken Township, looked up open-mouthed as Unruh came within a yard of him. The cobbler started up from his bench, but went down with a bullet in his stomach. A little boy who was in the shop ran behind the counter and crouched there in terror. Unruh walked out into the sunlit street. "I shot him in the chest first," he told the prosecutor later in meticulous detail, "and then I aimed for the head." His aim was devastating, and with reason. He had won marksmanship and sharpshooter's ratings in his service and practiced with the Luger all the time, with the target set up in the cellar of his home. From the cobbler's, he went to the little tailor shop at 3214 River Road. The tailor was out. Helga Sangrino, 28 years old, the tailor's wife, was there alone. The couple, incidentally, had been only married 1 month. She screamed when Unruh walked in with his Luger in hand. Some people across the street heard her. Then the gun blasted again, and Mrs. Sangrino pitched over, dead. Unruh walked into the sunlight again. All this was only a matter of seconds, and still only a few persons had begun to understand what was afoot down the street. At 3210 River Road is Clark Hoover's little country barbershop. In the center was a white painted carousel-type horse for children customers. Horace Smith, a blond boy only 6 years old, was in it, with a bib around his neck, submitted to a shearing. His mother, Mrs. Catherine Smith, 42, sat on a chair against the wall and watched. Unruh walked in the brew, that's Mrs. Smith's nickname for her little boy, and put the Luger to the child's chest. The shot echoed and reverberated in a little 12-by-12 shot. The little boy's head pitched toward the wound, his hair half cut, stained with red. Unruh never said a word. He put the Luger close to the shaking barber's hand before the horrified mother. Unruh leaned over and fired another shot into Hoover. The veteran made no attempt to kill Mrs. Smith. Unruh walked back to the center of the street. He fired a shot at an apartment window at 3208 River Road. Tommy Hamilton, 2 years old, fell back with a bullet in his head. Unruh walked back towards 32nd Street, reloading the Luger. Now the Little Street, a small block with only 5 buildings on one side, 3 one-story stores on the other, was shrill with women and children's panicky outcries. A group of 6 or 7 little boys and girls fled past Unruh. They screamed, "Crazy man!" in unintelligible sentences. Unruh did not seem to hear or see him. Alvin Day, a television repairman who lives in nearby Mantua, had heard the shooting, but driving into the street he was not aware of what had happened. Unruh walked up to the car window as Day rolled by and fired once to the window with deadly aim. The repairman fell against the steering wheel. The car seemed to wobble. The front wheels hit the opposite curb and stalled. Day was dead. Cohen the druggist, a heavy man of 40, had run into the street shouting, "What's going on here? What's going on here?" But at the sight of Unruh, hurried back into his shop. James J. Hutton, 45, an insurance agent from Westmont, New Jersey, started out of the drug shop to see what the shooting was all about. Like so many others, he had figured at first it was some car backfiring. He came face to face with Unruh. Unruh said quietly, "Excuse me, sir," and started to push past him. Later, Unruh told the police, "That man didn't act fast enough. He didn't get out of my way." He fired into the body. The insurance man pitched on the sidewalk and lay still. Cohen had run to his upstairs apartment and tried to warn Minnie Cohen, 63, his mother, and Rose, his wife, 38, to hide his son, Charles, 14. Mrs. Cohen shoved the boy into the closed closet and leaped into another closet herself. She pulled the door too. The druggist, meanwhile, had leaped from the window onto a porch roof. Unruh, a gaunt figure at the window behind him, fired at the druggist's back. The druggist, still running, bounded off the roof and lay dead on 32nd Street. Unruh fired at the closet where Mrs. Cohen was hidden. She fell dead behind the closet door, and he did not bother to open it. Mrs. Minnie Cohen tried to get to the telephone in an adjoining bedroom to call the police. Unruh fired bullets into her head and body, and she sprawled dead on the bed. Unruh walked down the stairs, his Luger reloaded, and came out into the street again. A couple had stopped at River Road, obeying a red light. The passengers obviously had no idea what was loose on East Camden, and no one had a chance to tell them. Unruh walked up to the car, and though it was filled with total strangers, he fired deliberately at them, one by one, through the windshield. He killed the 2 remaining passengers, Mrs. Helen Matlock Wilson, 43, of Pennsauken, who was driving, and her mother, Mrs. Emma Matlock, 66. New York Times, September 7, 1949. Howard retreated back to his apartment and after a brief standoff surrendered. There was never a trial. Deemed insane, he has spent his whole life in Trenton State Psychiatric Hospital. Unruh is sometimes called the father of mass murderers, but he's also the first of the military-trained mass murderer, a gruesome legacy that includes Charles Whitman, Arthur Shawcross, David Berkowitz, Jeffrey Dahmer, John Muhammad. The spirit and drive that made Camden so productive died soon after. Racial unrest, the closing of the shipyards, one corrupt political regime after another left the city in complete disarray. Camden had been crowned murder capital of the United States several times. Howard Unruh stripped the city of its innocence. Trust thy neighbor no longer. There have been recent developments. A new aquarium, baseball stadium, entertainment complex, and recently a $1 billion redevelopment plan has been implemented that will reshape the entire Kramer Hill community. Among the properties on the may-be-acquired list are the homes and businesses at 32nd and River. Howard Unruh, as of November 2005, is alive and well.